Imagine holding a living direwolf puppy in your hands. That sounds like fantasy, right? Well, it's now become reality, thanks to genetic engineering. Yes, direwolves aren't just from Game of Thrones. These were very real ancient predators, and scientists have successfully revived them. So guess what? Scientists just brought back the direwolf. Yes, the actual creature. This is not something they're close to doing. They've actually done it. Colossal Biosciences, a Dallas-based biotech company, announced that they've successfully used ancient DNA to create 3 direwolf puppies. CEO Ben Lamb said, "Our team took DNA from a 13,000-year-old tooth and a 72,000-year-old skull and made healthy direwolf puppies." He also added, "It was once said any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Well, today our team gets to unveil some of the magic they are working on." So 2 of the pups are named Romulus and Remus. The 3rd was named Khaleesi, of course a nod to Game of Thrones, which features direwolves. In fact, George R. R. Martin, the author of Game of Thrones, actually got to hold one of these pups. How nuts would that be? You write a fantasy novel with these long extinct creatures in them, and then decades later you actually get to hold a real living one. I don't think any goal I can imagine is ever going to live up to that. So these pups aren't clones. They're actually genetically engineered to be as close to direwolves as science can get. They were born from surrogate dogs and raised with bottle feedings, so they're friendly for now, but they're already starting to act more like true wolves. Thankfully, they live on a massive 2,000-acre preserve with cameras, drones, and guards keeping an eye on them. The Bucardo, or Pyrenean ibex if you're feeling fancy, was a wild mountain goat that went extinct in 2000 when the last known female, named Celia, was found squished under a fallen tree in Spain. Brutal way to go, honestly, but science wasn't ready to let her go just yet. In 2003, researchers went Jurassic Park on the situation, and they took frozen skin samples from Celia, using them to create a clone. And it worked, sort of. A domestic goat was used as the surrogate mom, and against all odds, a cloned baby ibex was born. It was the first time an extinct animal had been brought back to life. The victory party didn't last long though. The clone only lived for about 7 minutes. It had a severe lung defect and couldn't breathe properly, so technically the Pyrenean ibex became the first animal to go extinct twice. Kind of amazing and kind of heartbreaking. Even though the success was short-lived though, it proved that de-extinction wasn't just science fiction anymore. It was messy and complicated, sure, but it was real and a real possibility to do better. And in those 7 minutes, the seemingly impossible actually happened. So pronounce something like Przewalski. Przewalski's horse is a prehistoric-looking beast that once roamed the steppes of Central Asia. These stocky horses are the last truly wild horse species on Earth. Not wild as in used to be tame and then went rogue, wild as in never domesticated. But things didn't go well for them once humans showed up with fences and firearms. By the late 60s, these horses were completely extinct in the wild. The only ones left were in zoos, but in 2020, scientists stepped in. Using 40-year-old frozen cells from a stallion named Kaporovic, they created a clone, and boom, you had a healthy baby Przewalski's horse, now born in a Texas facility, who they named Kurt. Kurt's genes came from a bloodline that hadn't been part of the breeding pool in decades, so he brought much-needed diversity to a population that was getting a little too inbred. And thanks to years of conservation work, these wild horses are back in their native Mongolia, running free once again. The quagga was a strange-looking animal, a zebra subspecies with stripes in the front half of its body and then just a plain brown rear end. It once lived in the grasslands of South Africa, roaming around in large herds, but like a bunch of species, it didn't survive European colonization. Settlers hunted it for meat and hides, and by the 1880s, it was declared extinct. The last known quagga died in captivity in Amsterdam in 1883. For a long time, scientists didn't even realize the quagga was a distinct subspecies. That changed in the 1980s though, when a German natural historian named Reinhold Rau launched the Quagga Project. Using preserved skins and taxidermy specimens, Rau conducted genetic testing and confirmed that the quagga was genetically close enough to plain zebras that selective breeding might be able to bring them back, at least in appearance. The idea was to breed plain zebras that naturally showed fewer stripes. generation after generation, until the animals started to resemble the extinct quagga. Over the decades, the project produced zebras with lighter coats, reduced striping, and even that same body shape described in old quagga records. The animals born from this project are now called Rao quaggas, and sure, they aren't true quaggas in the genetic sense, but they're close. Some have even been reintroduced into the environment in South Africa, living in the same type of environment their ancestors did. The Lord Howe Island stick insect was once believed to be extinct, wiped out by invasive rats and other pests. The insect, also known as the tree lobster for its very weird lobster-looking appearance, lived on Lord Howe Island in the Pacific Ocean. By the 1920s, the insect had completely disappeared though, or so everyone thought. For decades, it was assumed that the rats had done them in. But then in 2001, there was this incredible discovery. Researchers came across a population of these thought to be extinct insects surviving on Ball's Pyramid, a jagged, steep rock formation off the coast of Lord Howe Island. The fact that these things managed to hang on in such a harsh, isolated environment was mind-blowing, as well as the fact that they were even there at all. So now, scientists have been working hard to breed them in captivity and reintroduce them to their original island home, and they're slowly making a comeback. The Rastrador Brasileiro is a hunting dog that was bred in the 1950s to chase down jaguars and wild pigs in Brazil's thick forests. But by 1973, the poor dogs got hit with tick-borne diseases and a bunch of insecticide poisoning to try and get rid of the pests. Well, this was enough to wipe them out, and they were officially declared extinct. In the early 2000s, though, a group of dog lovers and breeders formed a group called the Brazilian Tracker Rescue Support Group. They set out to find any surviving dogs that had the original breed's traits in them. They spent years tracking down these dogs, selectively breeding them, and by 2013, they'd successfully brought the breed back from extinction. The Floriana giant tortoise lived on Floriana Island in the Galapagos. As the name suggests, these were huge tortoises, about 4.5 feet long. Sadly, by the 1800s, they were wiped out, mostly thanks to overhunting by sailors and the introduction of invasive species. And for over a century, everyone thought they were totally gone. But in 2012, scientists discovered that there might be some hope after all. They found a female tortoise on another island, Espanola, that had DNA showing she was related to the Floriana tortoises. This tortoise was nicknamed Lonesome George's cousin, and scientists went to work on a plan. They started breeding her with tortoises that were genetically close enough, and thanks to years of careful breeding, they managed to create a population of tortoises that closely resembled the extinct Floriana giant tortoises. It wasn't a perfect clone job, but was close enough to bring these species back in a new form. So while we don't have the extinct Floriana giant tortoise wandering around exactly, it's still better than nothing. Okay, now here's one you probably haven't heard of, the Montreal melon. So this is a type of melon that was native to Montreal, obviously, and used to grow in the area back in the 1800s. The melon had a very unique flavor. It's been described as having a slight spice to it, almost like nutmeg, and apparently it would just melt in your mouth when eating it. No surprise, it was a local favorite. But this melon pretty much disappeared in the early 1900s. No one really knows exactly why. Maybe it was due to disease or just the changing farming practices at the time, but whatever the case, the Montreal melon was gone. For over a century, it was nothing but a legend. But in 1996, seeds were discovered at a seed bank in, try and guess where, I'll give you a second. That's right, Iowa. Well, soon enough, the Montreal melon was back on local menus. The York groundsel was a little yellow flower that was hanging on in some pretty unusual places in York, England. It was a cross between two other plants and would grow in strange areas like railway sidings and roadways. But like many things in the world of nature, it didn't stand a chance once the city decided to crack down on weeds. By 1991, the flower was officially declared extinct in the wild. But just because it was gone doesn't mean people gave up on it. Turns out, there were seeds stored in the Millennium Seed Bank, a place where scientists keep seeds from all sorts of plants for situations just like this. In 2023, experts from Natural England decided to give the flower a second shot at life. Using those stored seeds, they managed to grow the York groundsel back to life, making this the first ever successful de-extinction in Britain. Now the plants are being reintroduced, and it's a major win for conservation, proving that with a little help from science, you can sometimes bring back what was thought to be lost forever. So sure, it's not an animal, but still a living thing, and that's pretty cool. The coelacanth is probably one of the most famous rediscovered animals in the world. For centuries, scientists thought that the coelacanth was long extinct, way back since the end of the Cretaceous period, around 66 million years ago. But in 1938, something that could only be described as mind-blowing happened. A fisherman off the coast of South Africa caught this unusual fish, and after scientists carefully examined it, they were amazed to find that this was a coelacanth. A fish that was supposed to have been gone for millions of years was still out there swimming in the ocean, and since then, scientists have tracked down several other coelacanths in the waters around Africa and Indonesia, proving that this ancient creature somehow survived the mass extinctions. So yeah, this one isn't technically de-extinct, just rediscovered. Still though, does make you wonder what other seemingly extinct animals may actually still be out there. The woolly mammoth, a massive shaggy-haired elephant relative, disappeared about 4,000 years ago, but scientists are working to bring it back. One biotech company called Colossal Biosciences is actually trying to do this, using gene editing technology to insert mammoth traits into the DNA of Asian elephants, the mammoth's closest living relatives. The goal is to create a hybrid that looks and behaves like a mammoth, with thick fur, a layer of fat for insulation, and the ability to survive in freezing temperatures. But why put all this time and effort into something like this? I mean, sure, it would be cool to see a real-life mammoth in person, but is there any other purpose behind research like this aside from the novelty? Well, in this case, yes, it's also an attempt to combat climate change. Back in the day, mammoths actually helped maintain Arctic permafrost by compacting the snow, which kept the ground cold. So scientists think reintroducing mammoth-like elephants to the Siberian tundra, for example, could help slow permafrost thawing. But it's one thing breeding a mammoth in a lab, creating a healthy, self-sustaining population of mammoths is another challenge entirely, and even if the science works, there are ethical things to consider here. Should we be bringing back an animal that no longer has a natural place in the world? And what about the elephants being modified in the process? Can't be fun for them. Still though, Colossal Biosciences claims they're making steady progress, aiming to have the first mammoth calves born within the next few years, and if that happens, it could be the start of something groundbreaking. The dodo is one of the most famous extinct animals in history. This chubby, flightless, silly bird lived on the island of Mauritius until humans and the rats, dogs, and pigs they brought with them wiped them out by the late 1600s. The dodo is often used as a symbol of extinction, but scientists are hoping to change that by bringing it back to life. Once again, Colossal Biosciences, along with researchers from the University of California, Santa Cruz, has fully sequenced the dodo genome. Now they're working on editing the DNA of the Nicobar pigeon, the closest living relative to the dodo, to recreate a dodo-like bird. The goal here is to use the dodo as kind of a test case for de-extinction, studying how reintroducing a lost species will affect the natural ecosystems. That said, reintroducing the dodo wouldn't be easy. Mauritius has changed drastically since the dodo went extinct, and they're not sure whether a newly created dodo would have a place in today's environment, but no better way to find out than to try. Now we're getting into the really controversial territory. Unlike the woolly mammoth or dodo, Neanderthals weren't just animals, they were another species of human. They lived alongside our ancestors, interbred with them, and disappeared about 40,000 years ago. Some scientists think that if we really wanted to, we could bring them back, but should we? Harvard geneticist George Church has said that in theory we could clone a Neanderthal by editing modern human DNA to match a Neanderthal's genetics. Of course, that would require a human surrogate mother to carry and give birth to a Neanderthal baby, and I think the list of women signing up for that would be slim. Pregnancy is a nightmare already, from what I've heard, but at least the light at the end of the tunnel is that you'll have this adorable little baby to love when it's all over, hopefully. A little Neanderthal creature, though, probably is not the gold at the end of the rainbow most parents are hoping for. And there's also the question of what kind of life a Neanderthal would have. Would they be treated as a person, a science experiment, a sideshow attraction? Even ignoring the ethical issues here, there are practical concerns. Neanderthals adapted to a more Ice Age environment, and their brains worked differently from ours. Could they even function in today's world? Would they want to? While the idea of resurrecting a lost branch of humanity. It's definitely fascinating. It's also one of the most morally complicated things science could ever attempt. The Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine, was a strange marsupial predator native to Australia and Tasmania. It looked like a dog with stripes, had a pouch, kind of like a kangaroo, and it could open its jaws wider than any modern mammal. The last known thylacine died in captivity in 1936, but there are rumors there may still be a small group of them roaming around. Now scientists want to bring it back for real. Our friends over at Colossal Biosciences and the University of Melbourne are using CRISPR gene editing to modify the DNA of the numbat, which kind of looks like a squirrel-sized version of the Tasmanian tiger. The idea is to reintroduce thylacine traits into numbats, eventually creating an animal nearly identical to the extinct predator. If they succeed, they plan to release them into Tasmania to restore ecological balance. Since the thylacine was an apex predator, it being gone may have disrupted the natural order of things. But even if they managed to create a thylacine-like creature, would it actually behave like one? No one really knows. There's also the question of whether these animals could survive in modern Australia, where their old habitat has changed quite a bit. And again, it's an exciting idea, but a gamble, and one that may take decades to pull off. The Irish elk was one of the largest deer species ever, with males sporting antlers up to 12 feet across. Now, these weren't actually exclusive to Ireland. The Irish elk roamed across Europe and Asia before going extinct around 7,000 years ago. Scientists think there were a couple of factors here: climate change and human hunting, pretty typical stuff. But because the Irish elk is closely related to modern deer species like the fallow deer, scientists think they may be able to use selective breeding and genetic engineering to recreate it. Since deer still thrive in many parts of the world, reintroducing the Irish elk might not be as far-fetched as bringing back something like the dodo or the mammoth. But again, just because we could doesn't necessarily mean we should. A deer with 12-foot antlers sounds cool until you realize it might not even fit in modern forests or even be able to survive in today's climate. And let's be honest, if these things started wandering onto highways, that would be a disaster waiting to happen. Still, if scientists pull it off, seeing these ancient giants roam again would be pretty incredible. The cave lion was one of the largest big cats to ever exist, roaming across Europe and Siberia before going extinct about 10,000 years ago. Unlike modern lions, it was bigger, fluffier, probably better suited to cold climates. Scientists have been able to recover some pretty well-preserved cave lion cubs from Siberian permafrost, and now they're considering bringing them back because cave lions are closely related to modern lions. Researchers think cloning or selective breeding could eventually revive them. They want to reintroduce them to places like Siberia, where they might help control herbivore populations. Some argue that since cave lions once roamed these areas, they could fit right back into the ecosystem. But obviously, introducing a prehistoric predator back into the environment isn't exactly risk-free. Even if they managed to bring back cave lions, where would they live exactly? In an age where regular lions are already struggling to survive, throwing an Ice Age cat into the mix seems kinda nuts to me. Plus, imagine the headlines: genetically engineered super lion escapes, eats entire village. Maybe this would be interesting. The moa was a massive flightless bird from New Zealand, with some species standing up to 12 feet tall, which is horrifying. Unlike the dodo, which fell victim to European colonization, the moa was wiped out centuries earlier by the Maori, who hunted it to extinction by around 1400. But you guessed it, some scientists want to bring it back. Using DNA recovered from moa fossils and preserved remains, some researchers think there's a possibility they can edit the genome of the moa's closest living relative, the South Island takahe, to recreate a bird similar to the extinct one. Since New Zealand's ecosystem evolved without large land predators, the idea is that reintroducing the moa could help restore the natural balance. But there are a few problems. First, moa weren't just big, they were slow and defenseless, making them pretty easy targets for modern invasive species. Second, the forests and grasslands they used to roam have changed. We don't really know if a revived moa would have enough habitat left to survive. The quagga was a bizarre looking zebra that only had stripes on one half of its body. Almost looked like nature just ran out of ink and then we're just like, whatever, they're gonna go extinct anyway, why try? It lived in South Africa but was hunted to extinction by the late 1800s. Unlike some of the more
ambitious de-extinction projects, scientists have already made progress on reviving the quagga without even using cloning. All they've done is selective breeding, finding zebras with kind of quagga-like traits and then breeding them together. And over time, they've created animals that do look very similar to the original quagga. And sure, they're not genetically identical to the old ones, but they're close enough that they could one day roam the plains of South Africa just like their ancestors. The big question is whether reviving the quagga actually serves any purpose beyond proving that it can be done. And in this case, yeah, I don't know, doesn't really seem like it. Still, of all the de-extinction efforts, this one seems the most practical and least likely to result in unexpected disaster, so there's that. The great auk was basically a northern hemisphere penguin. Couldn't fly, but it was an incredible swimmer, using its flipper-like wings to dive for fish. Unfortunately, they were easy pickings for humans who hunted them to extinction by the mid-1800s. Now scientists want to use gene editing to modify the DNA of its closest living relative, the razorbill, to recreate them. If successful, these new ones could be released onto remote islands where their ancestors once lived, bringing back an important part of the North Atlantic ecosystem. But would the modern world even have room for the great auk? Climate change, pollution, overfishing, that's dramatically altered the oceans since this bird went extinct. Even if scientists manage to recreate it, there's no guarantee it could survive today. On the other hand, if successful, it could be a major step toward using de-extinction to repair damaged ecosystems. So imagine a manatee, but bigger, way bigger. The Steller's sea cow was a massive marine mammal that could grow up to 30 feet long and weigh over 20,000 pounds. It used to live in the North Pacific, but was hunted to extinction by the late 1700s, less than 30 years after being discovered. Now, some scientists think they can bring them back. Unlike other extinct animals, the Steller's sea cow does have a very close modern relative, the dugong, meaning once again, there's a possibility they could modify dugong DNA to recreate something similar to the extinct sea cow. Since sea cows once played an important part in keeping kelp forests healthy, bringing them back could also help restore marine habitats, but the modern ocean isn't exactly a safe place for giant, slow-moving herbivores. Pollution and boat traffic make it unlikely that a revived Steller's sea cow would have an easy time surviving, and considering that humans wiped them out already, who's to say it wouldn't just happen again? Still, if scientists succeed, we might one day see these massive creatures gliding through the ocean once again, as well as everything else on this list. And we're kicking off the list with a big one, the king of the dinosaurs, the Tyrannosaurus rex. This was a formidable dinosaur that lived approximately 68 to 66 million years ago during the late Cretaceous period. Known for its massive size, sharp teeth, and powerful hind limbs, the T-Rex was one of the largest land predators in Earth's history. The T-Rex could grow up to 40 feet in length and stood about 15 feet tall, with a large skull filled with serrated teeth, capable of crushing bones. It was a carnivorous predator, preying on other dinosaurs and potentially scavenging for food as well. T-Rex likely had excellent vision and sense of smell, making it a skilled hunter. The general consensus amongst scientists is that resurrecting dinosaurs is highly improbable due to the ancient age of their fossils, making the recovery of viable genetic material nearly impossible. Despite these challenges, though, the Adam Smith Institute is attempting to resurrect dinosaurs, including the T-Rex, by backbreeding flightless birds. Modern birds are considered descendants of dinosaurs, and the Institute aims to isolate their DNA and incorporate gene technology to recreate dinosaur traits. The Institute's vision goes beyond just resurrecting the T-Rex. They plan to extend this technology to revive more dinosaur species, expanding the controversial boundaries of de-extinction efforts. Number 9, the Velociraptor. Velociraptors were about 6 feet long, standing around 2 feet tall. They had a slender body, sharp claws on their hands, and of course that distinctive sickle-shaped claw on each foot. They were incredibly predatory. I'm going to start off with a quote by Madsen Peary, the president of the aforementioned Adam Smith Institute. Several species of dinosaur will be recreated, making their appearance on Earth for the first time in 66 million years. It will not be done a la Jurassic Park, with their DNA extracted from blood-sucking insects preserved in amber. It was always highly dubious that enough of the DNA molecule would survive in this way. Instead, dinosaurs will be recreated by backbreeding from flightless birds. Birds are modern-day dinosaurs, but they no longer look like dinosaurs. Deep within their DNA, however, will be information relating to the time when they did. And a combination of selective breeding and gene technology will be used to give them the characteristic features of dinosaurs. The jaws with teeth, the tail, the small forelimbs. Anyway, I can't imagine dinosaurs like T-Rexes and velociraptors being brought back and then released into the wild, because that would be a disaster and entirely pointless. This would definitely be a situation where they would be created purely for the spectacle of it, but that would be pretty ethically questionable as well. But now that we've established what these dinosaurs would be used for, basically being caged up for us to gawk at in weird amusement parks, let's move on to the next terrifying species on the list. Next up on the list is the Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus was a dinosaur that roamed the earth around 68 to 66 million years ago. It was a herbivore, but it was coated in this crazy armor. It was about the length of a car, covered in thick, bony plates all over its body. It also had a tail that ended in a heavy club type thing, like solid bone. Very powerful weapon. If a predator like Tyrannosaurus rex came too close, Ankylosaurus could swing its tail, delivering a bone-crushing blow. These were like tanks of their time. It wasn't the kind of dinosaur you'd want to mess with if you were another dinosaur. As for the idea of bringing them back, in theory, it's a possibility with advancements in genetic engineering. Scientists have explored the concept of de-extinction. This would mean extracting and manipulating ancient DNA, filling in the gaps with DNA from related modern species, and then finding a suitable surrogate for gestation. But again, all that DNA is really old, so it would probably mean something similar to the whole flightless bird thing, but I'm not a scientist and I don't know how the hell they're even going to go about that. But number 7, Gigantosaurus. Gigantosaurus was a massive theropod dinosaur that lived around 98 million years ago. Gigantosaurus earned its name, which means giant southern lizard, because of its formidable size and strength. In terms of sheer size, Gigantosaurus was one of the largest theropod dinosaurs, rivaling even Tyrannosaurus rex. It could reach lengths of up to 40 feet or more, making it a top predator in its ecosystem. It had these really sharp teeth, some measuring over 6 inches long, which were designed for, of course, tearing through flesh. It had incredible hunting abilities. It was an apex predator. Its large size, combined with its powerful jaws and sharp teeth, allowed it to take down even the largest dinosaurs of its time. In at number 6, we have iguanodons. These were actually herbivores, so not as dangerous as some of the stuff on this list, but they were still very formidable creatures, and I think it wouldn't take kindly to humans walking up to them if they were walking around nowadays for some reason. These lived during the early Cretaceous period. It was a large dinosaur, reaching lengths of up to 33 feet and weighing several tons. They're known for that unique thumb spike, which would have been pretty useful for defending against predators. They also had a toothless beak at the front of their mouth, used for cropping vegetation. It could walk on both its hind legs and front limbs. This allowed it to browse for vegetation efficiently. It likely fed on a variety of plants, ferns, conifers, and other vegetation that was abundant during the time. Iguanodons were also one of the first dinosaurs to be scientifically described. Its fossils were discovered in the early 19th century and played a big role in shaping our understanding of dinosaurs during that time. Alright, iguanodons are cool, but not quite as terrifying as a lot of what's on this list. So let's get back to the bad boys, shall we? At number 5, we have the Spinosaurus. This is the main dino from Jurassic Park 3. I always thought this was a really cool one when I was a kid. These are often called the spine lizard. It was a colossal dinosaur that existed around 112 to 93 million years ago. These spines on its back could reach up to 7 feet in height. The dino itself was around 49 to 59 feet long and weighed in at 7 to 20 tons. Spinosaurus had an elongated snout filled with conical teeth suitable for catching slippery prey like fish. At first we thought it to be primarily a land-dwelling dinosaur, but more recent findings suggested it was more adapted to a semi-aquatic or even fully aquatic lifestyle. It had large clawed limbs specifically adapted for swimming. Next we have the Gigantoraptor. These things really creep me out. Imagine a turkey, like ostrich type thing, but the size of a house. It was about 16 feet long and stood around 11 feet tall, making it one of the largest feathered dinosaurs ever discovered. What makes Gigantoraptor truly interesting is its unusual combination of features. It had a beak like a bird, which hints at a diet of plants and small animals, but it couldn't fly. Scientists believe it might have used its large size as a defense mechanism against predators instead. Gigantoraptor was discovered in Mongolia, adding to the ever-expanding list of fascinating dinosaurs found in that region. When scientists unearthed its fossils, they were baffled and pretty excited all at once. It was massive, but had bird-like traits, which challenged what researchers thought they knew about dinosaurs' evolution at the time. Number 3, the Maposaurus. So this colossal predator prowled ancient landscapes of South America around 100 million years ago. Maposaurus was a member of the theropod family, closely related to the famous T-Rex. It could reach lengths of up to 33 feet. One of the most intriguing things about the Maposaurus, though, and what set it apart from the T-Rex, was its social behavior. Fossil evidence suggests that these dinosaurs might have hunted in packs. So imagine a gang of these massive predators working together, kind of like velociraptors would. This pack hunting strategy allowed them to target even the most enormous titanosaurs that roamed the region. Maposaurus was discovered in 2006 when its fossils were found in Argentina. And at number 2, we have the Megaraptor. These were actually closer to the T-Rex than they were the raptor actually, but they were much faster and more dexterous than the T-Rex. They also had the use of their hands, which would have made them a terrifying threat. The Megaraptor was a member also of the theropod family, known for its sharp claws, carnivorous habits. These guys had enormous sickle-shaped claws, not on their feet like other raptors, but on their hands, which could reach lengths of nearly 14 inches. These claws were its primary weapon for hunting, used to slash through the hides of prey with very deadly precision. The name Megaraptor actually translates to giant thief. When this thing was first discovered, it was misidentified because of a mismatched discovery of claws and other bones. It was thought to be closer related to the Velociraptor family, but it was later discovered the claws belonged to a different, larger dinosaur, leading to the creation of the genus Megaraptor. Its fossils have been dug out throughout South America. Its habitat would have been a mix of forests and then open plains, and it probably preyed on smaller dinosaurs and other creatures using those claws. And finally, we have Carnotaurus, the meat-eating bull. Just look at this monster. Incredibly intimidating, but relatively compact compared to some of its larger dinosaur relatives. It's of course known for the pair of horns above its eyes, giving it a bull-like appearance. Also kind of demonic to me. These horns, coupled with the deep skull and powerful jaw muscles, likely means that Carnotaurus didn't just take out weaker species, but probably fought amongst themselves too, using their headgear to establish dominance over one another and attract mates. They had a streamlined body, meaning they were probably fast and agile. Then you got those hilariously stubby arms. Definitely detracts from the fear factor a bit, but it compensated with those big, juicy legs in the back. Its fossils have been primarily found in South America, specifically in Argentina.
In our number 10 spot, we have the elephant bird. The elephant bird became extinct approximately 1000 to 1200 CE, and it is most likely due to human activity due to hunting, climate and vegetation change, and habitat loss due to deforestation. These birds are from the ratite family Epornithidae, and they were enormous flightless birds. They used to live in Madagascar. They stood about 9.8 feet tall and weighed approximately 1,600 pounds. Their closest living relative is the kiwi bird. It is said that they most likely ate low-hanging fruit, even though they look like they could gobble you up in one go. I would have personally thought them to be carnivores, but thankfully not. I would be fine if scientists brought them back. Any herbivore, is fine, but if they pulled a Jurassic Park on us and brought back the carnivores, then I would not be okay. In our number 9 spot, we have the Pyrenean ibex. The Pyrenean ibex was basically a wild goat. When people say that they love goats, I'm always a little perplexed. Why? Just why? Watch my dad will for sure watch this episode and will say something like, "Hey, I love goats," and yes, he does indeed. I don't know why. He's always sending me goat videos when he goes to his friend's farm. I shall never understand. Anyways, this wild goat was 5 feet long and apparently 30 inches tall. It was found in southwestern Europe, and the species died out in 2003, which is really not that long ago. I was 13. Shoot, I need to stop giving away my age. I mean, I was just born. Anyways, the last goat was born and died 7 minutes after its birth due to a lung defect. Hunting, inbreeding, and other factors basically caused this goat's extinction over time. Honestly, it's a bit of a shame that this goat no longer exists because it looks rather majestic, much more classier than regular goats. In our number 8 spot, we have the Chinese river dolphin. It breaks my heart to think that a species of the dolphin might be extinct, but sadly it is. The Chinese river dolphin, known as the baji, sadly went extinct in 2002. It primarily lived in freshwater rivers, primarily in the Yangtze River. The main reason for its extinction is due to the impact of humans. It was directly targeted by meat lovers, but also due to an increasing amount of construction projects on the river. The dolphin, who relies primarily on its sonar capabilities, found it hard to navigate for food because of the construction noise. Pollution in the waters also didn't help either, as well as overfishing. The males were about 7.5 feet long, while the females could be about 8.2 feet. I have a soft spot for dolphins, so honestly, I really hope scientists are able to bring this one back. In our number 7 spot, we have the dodo bird. The dodo bird is a bird that I would probably be terrified of if I was in a room alone with it, as it's just kinda scary looking. I don't know. I'm not a massive fan of birds in general, so maybe my biases. The dodo bird lived on the island of Mauritius. The bird was about 3.3 feet tall when alive. They went extinct in the 17th century, so quite a long time ago now. What did they eat? Well, their diet primarily consisted of eating from a specific tree that was, called the dodo tree, but the scientific name for the tree is called tambalacoke tree. They also ate nuts, fruits, roots, and small insects. So really, I would have nothing to be afraid of. I bet it would totally mess me up though, cause they were, big birds. My scrawny self would just hide. In our number 6 spot, we have the Tasmanian tiger. The Tasmanian tiger, despite its name, isn't actually a tiger, but was named this due to its tiger-like characteristics. The tiger only recently went extinct in the 20th century in 1936. The species slowly began to decrease about 2,000 years ago due to pressure from indigenous human settlers. They lived primarily in Australia and New Guinea. They were typically typically 39 inches to 51 inches long and 24 inches high. They have a close living relative, and that's the Tasmanian devil and the numbat. Not gonna lie, I had no idea the Tasmanian devil was a real animal. I totally thought it was just a lovable cartoon character, so I'm shook. Anyone else? Apparently there is hope for the Tasmanian tiger, as with recovering a little DNA, it may be possible to de-extinct the species. I hope scientists are able to. In our number 5 spot, we have the woolly mammoth. If the woolly mammoth was brought back to life and found just wandering around the world, I don't know how I would feel. Not gonna lie. I mean, first thought is to be terrified, but maybe that's dramatic because it's not like it would try to eat me because they are herbivores. Hashtag drama queen. Apparently the woolly mammoth would be about 10 feet to 12 feet high with a weight of up to 6 tons. They are the relative of African elephants, and they went extinct about 4,000 years ago in East Asia. Fun fact about the woolly mammoth, the rings on the tusk tells you how old it is, just like the rings on a tree do. Apparently there is a line for every year. In our number 4 spot, we have the saber-toothed tiger. Okay, if scientists brought back this species, this would be insane. But do we really need another predatory species that want humans to die? We already have to deal with, lions, tigers, and the reptiles in our government, so I think I speak for all of us when I say this isn't necessary. But would be cool to witness. The saber-toothed tiger has been a wonder to many for so long. They are famously known for their long, curved canine teeth. It can weigh anywhere between 485 pounds to 961 pounds. It was approximately 39 inches tall. Its closest relative is the tiger, of course. They originated in North and South America about 10,000 years ago, so it would be extraordinary if scientists found a way to bring them out of extinction. In our number 3 spot, we have the glyptodont. The glyptodont is a larger subfamily of the armadillo. They were around from approximately 34 million years ago in South America, and when the continents became connected, they spread to North America. They were about 12 feet long and 1.5 feet high. They had fluted teeth, and they were covered in a thick, bony carapace. They went extinct approximately 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. It's so interesting how much bigger animals were thousands of years ago, and now all of these big animals have much smaller subfamilies that are alive today. I mean, obviously that's better for us humans, as the less threats we have physically, the better, but still interesting to note. In our number 2 spot, we have the quagga. Okay, so you're probably thinking, Melissa, is this not just a zebra? Yeah, it is a species of zebra, but it's still different and it's extinct, and scientists are thinking of bringing it back. The quagga went extinct in the 19th century, and one of the last pictures that we have of the quagga alive is from 1870 in a London zoo. It's a subspecies of zebra from South Africa. It's about 8 feet 5 inches long and 4 feet 5 inches tall. It has a sandy brown coat with a white tail and stripes from the top to the middle part of its body. They were herbivores and would typically live 20 to 40 years. They look, pretty majestic to me. I hope this is a species that scientists are able to bring back. In our number 1 spot, we have the ground sloth. The ground sloth is from South Africa and went extinct approximately 11,000 years ago, and some of the species of ground sloths have been extinct longer. The megatherium, for example, has been extinct for 12,000 years, and this one in particular looks more like a bear than a sloth. It was massive and could be up to 20 feet tall, weighing about 6,600 pounds. Imagine these sloths were just roaming the world today. There are already enough scary bears in the world. I feel like, we're good without this one. But still, this would be an unbelievable breakthrough if we could bring back these creatures. Although I am sure that they wouldn't be as friendly as Sid from Ice Age. That short, cute little guy wouldn't hurt a fly. His lisp is literally the cutest thing in the world. But anyways, would be cool if they came back.